And welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable. This is your host, Shane Bailey. Got part of our new setup started here, and so we've got a new design starting, a little more space and a little more user-friendly, and we have a guest. My daughter decides to come say hello. She just got in from school, so anyways, that kind of threw me off just a little bit there. But we've got a new set design that's in the works, so hopefully get a little more room and a little more comfortable. Get a couple more spots out here for everyone. But I want to welcome Blair Smyly to the roundtable.
It's good to be here.
Glad
You're going to start a podcast on handyman jobs?
Let's see what happens after we finish. I know last week, we talked about how you have to measure twice and cut once.
That's right.
And that, I didn't follow those directions the first time on this, and was able to find a tool to fix my mistakes. But thankfully, it was not cutting enough as opposed to too much.
Looks good, though. Looks good.
That's always the issue there. And John Schultz.
Welcome. Or I guess.
Welcome.
I'm welcoming myself. Thanks for having me.
We are glad you're welcome to be here.
I am very welcomed.
Let's go on and get. I'm going to have to come up with a different word because it's not really housekeeping. It's just your listening enjoyment.
There you go.
That's how you can find us. We're on Twitter, SECSRT. Love for you to join in the conversations. We've got the tournament rolling around next week, so definitely going to see more action on Twitter from us. I know the last couple of weeks has been kind of slow from us tweeting from SECSRT, so we'll try to get a little more out, especially with the tournament coming around. Don't forget Facebook at SEC Sports Roundtable. If you do a search there, we have a page. You can also listen to the podcast on our Facebook page. You can listen to that podcast on iTunes. You can also listen to it on Stitcher Radio, as well as going to the website itself, which is secsportsroundtable.com. That's YouTube. There we go. I'm always missing YouTube. Video version of this podcast is also available on YouTube. One day we're going to be able to Ustream this and do it live for you guys. So if you want to come join in, we can have a chat and everything. But we're not quite right there to have that, but it'll be around the corner soon. So hopefully be on the lookout for one of those coming down the pipe. So that's all the housekeeping issues. Really what we've got to talk about today is two subjects. A little baseball. We'll cover that real fast. That's going to be our news subject since the new standings came out. And then we're going to do the rest of the podcast really all about basketball and the tournament. We've got tournament action coming up this week in the SEC. So let's get things started off by talking about the new polls that came out, I guess, today for baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
6 teams from the SEC. 7 teams from the SEC. I just want to leave out Georgia, and they're so good. They're 12th, 10-2.
Yeah.
But 7 teams in the SEC, 8 if you count A&M, 10 if you count all those receiving votes. Kentucky and UT are also in the mix as far as others receiving votes. So you've got 10 of 14 teams that's in the mix for baseball. And the one team that, for me is surprising that's not there is Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I mean,
they've had a rough go. I mean, they've played some pretty stout competition with, Stanford and Oregon, I believe. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
So I know they've kind of struggled out of the gates, and I think they're trying to get the old pitching staff, I think, worked out. But I think Tim Corbin will get them back in shape a little bit.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier in this podcast when the first polls came out that, Vanderbilt's a young program, and we talked about, all these teams in the SEC reload, but I think Vanderbilt really got hit pretty hard last year. I mean, that was their built to make a run kind of program, and you're loaded with freshmen and sophomores that are actually having to play every day, position players as well as relying heavily on that pitching staff. And you're talking there's a big difference in a 16-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid versus a 21-year-old kid in arm strength and development. So you are going to see that. I mean, baseball is notoriously good about getting high school talent and getting them in the draft, but they go down to Double-A or Single-A ball, and they're going to spend that time getting their arms ready.
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt's is kind of seeing that right now.
Yeah, they lost quite a few people last year for sure.
Yeah.
Was it 7 to 9 people got drafted?
It was a high number. I know. You know, I mean, what Corbin did over that really 5-year stretch there. You know, when you think about you know, David Price and what's his name? That's the third baseman for the Pirates. Perez.
Oh yeah,
Totally losing.
I know who you're talking about. Had the contract dispute.
Yeah, and so I mean, you got all that, and I think the one thing to really watch starting next year is how this new, you know, collective bargaining agreement is going to work towards college acceptance. Because I know the whole idea is those top round draft choices won't have the big lucrative payouts that and it's a shorter term to make the decision. You know, you have to make it earlier in the summer. So I think we'll see a lot of these draft choices actually still go to college, and these programs, you know, being developed like a Tim Corbin. I think it's going to be pretty cool for college baseball in the next couple of years.
So explain what's happening different in the draft with the collective bargaining agreement.
Well, the draft you actually had until like middle of August, almost when you actually enrolled into
Yeah, I think it was like
school.
a week before.
Yeah, and so what that is actually, I think now either June or July, you have to make that decision on whether you're going to, you know, negotiate and get that contract squared away. And the other kicker is with the new collective bargaining agreement, you know, if you went in the first round, you're pretty much guaranteed, you know, $1 million or so, or even more, depending on how high you were in that first round. Signing bonus, and those things are going to be pretty structured where they're going to be a lot lower, so that they're not putting out. Yeah, so they're not putting out as much for those draft choices in those early rounds. And so where a kid could go, you know, I'm going to go to college and play football and baseball, or, you know, I can kind of hold the Red Sox to, you know, they're a big money team. I'll just hold them. If they give me $1.5 million, I might go, that type of deal. So those rules have been changed a little bit. So what the understanding is that more of those kids will actually take advantage and go the college route and spend the 3 years, or play dual sports. So you're seeing that a lot more where they're playing the football and baseball. So it ought to be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I'd rather see them in college for a few years and develop into a program, since you're talking about the Southeastern, you know, the SEC, and how dominant these baseball programs are.
Well, if you're a high school student and you don't have that lucrative contract that you did prior to this, what you really have is more exposure going into the college ranks, because honestly, playing ball at single A podunk is not going to give you the same visibility as playing hardly anywhere of a notable school in the college ranks. You've got such fan bases going on in a lot of institutions that you're really going to give yourself a lot more exposure, and I think can increase that stock, so to speak. And
especially if you don't have the contract aspect of it. It's a whole lot easier to go through single A at 18 years old when you got $1.5 million, you know, guaranteed. So I think that's going to be, you know, one of those things that's going to be kind of interesting to see how it develops and see if it really works. I mean, if this is truly the way they've got it. I don't know how the numbers work. I haven't read that much into it, but I know that's a big thing coming next year.
It'll be interesting to see if they do an age requirement type thing, like, you know, where you have to stay out for 2 years or something. Because if they're going, you know, to college for 1 year.
Yeah, I don't think I think the rules still apply. You either go or you stay 3 years, and I think baseball does a pretty good job with regards to that, because you know, the thing about baseball is, you know, how many rounds they have. I mean, with all the development stuff that they've got, it's these programs like a Kentucky. I mean, like a Vanderbilt, where you got a Tim Corbin that can take a kid that may be a lefty that can throw high 80s, low 90s, and he would automatically be a kid that would go in the first couple of rounds and take, you know, $750,000 and go ahead and get in that single A, where Tim Corbin and these pitching coaches are doing such a good job of developing that they can put them into a program, and they can get an education while they're doing it, those types of things as well. So we'll see.
I think it's going to be good for college baseball. And anything else we want to cover? Do we want to give props to the 7 teams that are out there?
Yeah, I think we got Florida, obviously, is holding on to the top rank spot, and South Carolina, who's playing really well. My brother-in-law emailed me, text messaged me all yesterday because I think they took Clemson out to the cleaners over the weekend, which really joyed him. So I want to say that Arkansas and I believe Georgia are the kind of the next in line there, and then
we'll throw A&M in there as well. They're fifth, then Arkansas.
And then you've got LSU, Ole Miss, and I think Mississippi State, if I'm not mistaken. So State actually got into the top 25 with a 10-2 record, and Vanderbilt's right on the outs, and then Tennessee and Kentucky, you said, right?
Yeah. So Vanderbilt's outside of those two. I guess they've had some big losses, so they're not in the others receiving votes categories. But I see them turning around and getting back up into there because, I mean, they kind of have like a cakewalk schedule for the most part, except for Vanderbilt with Stanford. But they play a lot of non-conference opponents. I know Kentucky will play Western, and Vanderbilt will play Western Kentucky. Yeah. So they'll get some of those where they should be able to get some extra wins to help, get that win total up. So
the next probably 2.5 weeks will be pretty much Cupcake City. You usually start out maybe some tough games here and there, but then you try to develop that before you get into the season play.
Yeah. So we'll keep you abreast of what's going on as the season develops in the college baseball, because we haven't even gotten into SEC play really. So. Something you want to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to talk about real quick, just Tennessee. I know they played a tournament this weekend down in Minute Maid Park in Houston.
Okay.
So they beat Texas and they lost to Rice.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a pretty big win. I think Texas, they said, was 16th in the country right now.
It's pretty cool.
Rice is number 4.
Yeah.
And it's pretty neat because I think you're seeing, and Mississippi State's done this year, it's something I picked up on. So they're doing a little round robin. Normally when you start out, you just have a 3-game weekend series, and then you have that Tuesday, Wednesday game in the middle of the week that they normally kind of get in a rotation during SEC play a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then maybe a Tuesday, Wednesday game. But State has actually done like a 4-team round robin type deal. So they did that with Kansas and Middle Tennessee, or Mississippi Valley State or something. But this past weekend they played Lipscomb, and I just went blank on who else it was. So they're playing basically 4 games over the weekend. So they'll play like a doubleheader on Friday night against the 2 teams, and then play one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and then the others will kind of do it around. So it's kind of neat. Get 3 teams in there and play four times, and it's a neat way, and then maybe only play 1 during the middle of the week. So it's pretty interesting.
I like it. All right, well, let's talk about the basketball schedule. We finished the regular season play in SEC basketball this week. You had a good overtime win to get off the skids, would you say?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, we did.
5-game skid. It was getting kind of dicey there. I mean, you got to give it to Joe Lenardi and all those guys. They still have you guys safely in, and I just every week I'm looking at it, and it's like, all right, they're going to be in the first 4 out now.
Yeah.
They're going to be in the first 4 out this week. Oh wait, another week. But you're still, I mean, like an 11th seed, I think. So
yeah, 10th. Yeah. I think we'll hang around that if we can beat Georgia. But it was good to get. I mean, we were talking before the podcast about Arnett Moultrie, kind of coming out and calling the players out. And he's the one guy that, from an effort standpoint, you can't question, because he's a guy that when he gets on the court, he goes 100 miles an hour. Whether he's screwing up or he's making good plays, he's going to do that. So it was kind of nice to see, and looks like they, it took every bit of everything they had to beat South Carolina. That South Carolina was kind of going into that game with an opportunity of kind of the wounded dog and see if you can steal one. And State still has a hard time guarding, like we talked about the last time. They just don't guard very well, and but they ended up making a terrific inbounds play on the with 1.4 seconds left in overtime to steal the victory, and which led to coming into Saturday playing Arkansas and probably one of their most complete games they've played in SEC play by just blowing them out of the building. So it's a good way to end the season, on that 2-game run after they kind of cleared the air, and they're still kind of a Jekyll and Hyde, so we don't know what's going to happen. I know they get Georgia in the tournament, and If they win there, they go into Vanderbilt, which could be it's a little bit of a matchup problem for them because they got good guard play. But we'll see. We beat them this year, but you don't know where Vanderbilt's going to be either, so it's going to be one of those things.
And that's where I was going to head. Was you segued it for me basically? Is that you guys ended the season? You guys being Mississippi State ended the season on a high note. A team that you potentially are going to play in the second round of the SEC tournament did the complete opposite. I mean, and John over here is thankful for that.
Very thankful, yes. Tennessee, I mean, they've been playing awesome.
Yeah.
7-8 in the last 8, and I think that they're really just their defense is coming along. They seem to be a lot more comfortable in offense, and hopefully the tournament committee looks at their overall body of work and say, hey, pre-Stokes they had some bad losses, but ever since he's gotten there and just having a coach for a little while, I think they're starting to buy in and really play well in his system. Yeah,
and it's weird how the committee is going to look at that because it's one of those things where you still have that really bad Austin Peay loss at home. Yes. When you're still trying to figure out who's going to be who.
With or without Stokes, that's a game they should have won.
Right.
College of Charleston.
Yeah. And then you also got the Georgia that was just kind of the mystery game that you're taking a bad loss. It's Mississippi State's kind of the same deal. You got a Georgia loss at home. And, they're the 11th seed. I mean, they're not a good basketball team. And Mississippi State comes off a really emotional Ole Miss game, turns around less than 48 hours later and just blows an egg. And Tennessee kind of did the same thing. So it's one of those things where you got to take into consideration, and we talked about this the last time, the committee, they have their bullet points now. It's totally different than it was 5 years ago where, what do we say, Kenyon Martin for Cincinnati breaks his leg and it totally screws up their seed.
Yeah.
And they take that in consideration. And today they don't do that. So, unfortunately for Tennessee, I think part of you has to give it to them. Like, you got to give them a little bit, but the way the committee's set up now, it's not going to be looked that way, unfortunately for them, because but they win 2 games in this tournament, man. They're going to be
I think
right
that's
there.
What they have to do. I think one game they're still probably, I think right now a lot of the sites have them bubble team, first 4 out. I think with 1 win they're probably a little bit closer. 2, I would say they're probably definitely in it. I mean, you have to look at it too. They played Kentucky real close in one of the games. They beat Florida twice.
Yeah.
And they played Duke and Memphis both close. So if the committee looks at those games, hopefully that they will.
And Florida's not helping them. I mean,
no, and that's the other thing.
That's the thing to struggle. I mean, that you're a little bit frustrated at because Florida. I heard guys talking about today. Sometimes a season teams is really quick, and for some it's just a grind. It's long. Florida, man, you just look at that team and it's like. They feel like they've been doing this for like 13 months.
Yeah.
Because they lost their big men. They just been grinding away, and so. But I like Tennessee and the way they're obviously playing right now, and those 2 big guys. They're tough to play against, and they just got the momentum. The problem is, the great thing about it is that when you're 10 and 12, and you're like first 4 out.
Yeah.
You kidding me going to the SEC tournament? There's no way. And now they're there. So it's just, can you win that game and just keep the momentum going?
Now, do you think in terms of RPI, does it? I don't really know if that's affected by the tournament or not, but do you think it helps or hurts them if Mississippi State or Georgia wins? Who do you think that most Tennessee fans would be rooting for this weekend?
Oh, I think you need Mississippi State to win because you lost to them on a it doesn't really matter. What's Tennessee's RPI?
They're in like I think the
low
80s? 7. No, I think they're in the low 70s or high 60s right now.
Okay, so they're right there because I think State's hovering right around 60. Yeah. And if you're 60 and under,
it's almost like a given you're in. But if I think I heard this today. If you're above 67, then only like 7 teams in the past 10 years have ever gotten in, and no team that has higher than 70's ever gotten in.
You've got to be in the 50s to really supplant yourself for the simple fact that you still got all those mid-majors that no matter what happens, Sun Belt Conference is an example. We talked about that a little before the podcast. Middle Tennessee State should have been the championship team from there. Now they won't even go to the show. Now, but you have some of those teams there that those mid majors. Creighton was another example where they were going to go regardless. So you needed them as a UT to win their conference tournament so that there wasn't an extra mid-major going.
That's really what's helping. I mean, it's obviously what's kept Mississippi State in the bowl in the actual projections for the tournament, but it's also what's gotten Tennessee up that ladder is just a very weak bubble teams.
Yes.
I mean, so if you can get this thing, I mean, like MTSU chokes last night in the quarterfinals. I mean, they're not going to the tournament. They're going to be 25-5, I think, or 25-6 now. That's a one-bid league, and they're just not going to get it. So you need the Creightons to win. You need the who's playing tonight? Drexel and whoever they're playing. VCU maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So you got to have those things actually happen, but there's just not a lot of.
Well, what also is different, and I'm going to look at last year as an example. Alabama was 12-4 in the SEC and didn't make the tournament.
Yep.
UT is
10-6,
but yet the difference is the way it all worked out because UT beat Florida twice, right?
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt once. They had that's the tiebreaker is the head-to-head.
Yeah.
And Vandy and Florida ended up splitting. So you're looking at a record where
and they at least scheduled somewhat tough. So you had Memphis.
I'm looking strictly at the SEC.
Yeah.
You've got UT finishing second in
Crazy.
the regular season, and if everything else goes away, that has to give them a lot of weight, and that right there is your balance for the pre-Stokes, post-Stokes talk. Is that now you're second in the SEC, you get that first round bye. Now I also think though that might actually hurt Tennessee because of the simple fact that the way Tennessee is playing right now, they really needed Florida to beat Kentucky so that they didn't receive that bye. Well, they still would have received the bye.
Yeah, either way.
If Vanderbilt would have beat you, then it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But if you would not have the bye, your chances of winning that first round and that second round gives you a possibility to have 3 wins as opposed to struggling to get 2.
I mean, I do think we got a pretty great draw, though. I don't really mind to play Ole Miss or Auburn, really.
Yeah.
No, we talked about that before you got here in some of our pre-talk.
I mean, I'd be more scared if I was, if we had to play Arkansas in the second round, I think.
Yeah.
I
tell you right now, Arkansas, I can tell you right now, I wouldn't want to play Ole Miss. Ole Miss won 3 in a row. They got length, which nobody really talks about, but they had a little bit of a blow up 5 games ago with that Jalen Kendrick that came over from Memphis, and he kind of got hurt or there for a little bit, so he kind of was down for a game. But Nick Williams has come alive, Terrence Henry's come alive. They got some beef, and so
you bring up something that I looked at that I was going to throw out there. How many player, that you get a player of the week in the SEC for a freshman and a regular player of the week. So there's 34 players of the week combined.
Yeah.
How many do you think Ole Miss had?
6.
3.
3.
Now how many did Mississippi State have?
0.
No, 2.
2. Yeah.
But if you would have looked at it preseason and said, would Ole Miss had more players of the week honors than Mississippi State? I would have said no way.
I mean, what they've done the last 3 games, that's the thing about it is they're getting a good matchup against Auburn because I think they just match up well with Auburn. And so they're good. They're slightly a matchup problem. So they could cause Tennessee a little bit more trouble than not. But Tennessee kind of jumped on them. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that you don't, but I'm saying on paper it's like Ole Miss playing Tennessee's going to win. But I think it could be a tougher game if that's the route that it goes.
Now, how many times do you think Vanderbilt got the Player of the Week award?
A lot, probably. 12.
Jenkins.
2.
2.
What's Tennessee at 1 or 2? I know
Kentucky get it every week.
Stokes won it last year.
Tennessee only got it 10 times.
You mean Kentucky?
Tennessee. I'm sorry. Kentucky only received it 10 times. Florida 8. UT's next at 3. Ole Miss is at 3. LSU, Vandy, Georgia, and State all had 2, and Arkansas and Alabama bring it up with 1. I was completely amazed at those numbers.
That's
I think actually Tennessee won it the first week and the last week because I think Golden had it the first week and then Stokes won it this past week.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe a Mayman in somewhere in the middle or something.
I think you're exactly right when you look at who it was. But
yeah, the thing that we know is the tournament doesn't always go why we think it's going to go. And so I'm interested to see. I think there's some interesting games that are going to come on. I mean, the Mississippi State Vanderbilt game, if we get past Georgia, I mean, playing at 10 o'clock basically, because you're not going to be playing at 9. That game always gets pushed at least 30 or 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So
I know they're trying to get the West Coast, but realistically, their market is the East and Central time zones.
Well, it's just hard to put 4 games in there. I mean, you got to actually do the hour and a half intermission in between the 2 games, and so it's just
they do that for the news, but they still could 30 minutes. I mean, it doesn't. You can clear them out and get them back in a little more time.
Yeah, but that's really that's actually for the participants that are there at the game, because
give them a break.
Yeah, because I can tell you, Duddy, I've done that 3 times out of the last 4 years, and
those 4 games.
Yeah.
In one day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've been for.
I've gone to every game for 3 out of the last 4 years.
A lot of hot dogs.
Yeah, it's an exhausting. I mean, Thursday and Friday, it's a pretty exhausting venue. Now it's really good when you have it. It's really exhausting when you get into Nashville, because you have a 20,000 seat arena compared to a big football stadium. So that it's a lot more energy. So by the time you get finished with a day, you're more exhausted than you are in the stadiums, because.
And Nashville will have it for the next 7 years, and 2 of those 7 they still haven't determined where the venue will be.
Yeah, you know how that actually happened. They're just kind of off topic, but with the new convention center, the SEC has kind of done a dumb thing where they've actually only gone out up to 5 years in planning their SEC tournament, and Nashville has requested that they actually get into an 8-year rotation, because some of these larger cities need to actually have to be able to plan those. And so when they went to go participate for the 2015 2 years ago and bid for it, they'd already had a 2013. So they bid for 2015, and also told them that they had 2016 and 2019 available, and they took it because they actually laid out their argument. So they went there just to decide on 2015 and voted to actually put it 2016 and 2019.
So they got 15, 16, and 19 while they were there.
So in the decade from 2010 to 2019, Nashville will have it 5 out of 10 years.
And
it's a great place for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, it is. I mean, you got Kentucky.
I've been to every one of them. I've been to Tampa, which is fantastic. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better 4 days. I mean, 81 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. Played golf at 7:30 every morning. Got to the arena by 1 p.m.
But that's why
Eastern.
it was a long day. You were already drunk by the time you got to number 10.
Fantastic. Now there's only 12,000 people that showed up there, because nobody from Arkansas. Yeah, I mean, it's in Tampa, but Atlanta. You go to the Georgia Dome. Where do you pile out and go to? I was there when the tornado hit, so that short-lived that trip.
Yeah.
But you got CNN, and there's like 2 bars there, and then there's one, a good 10-minute walk away. And then New Orleans is obviously a great one, but they just don't have it there that much.
The stadium's just so big, you just get lost in it.
Which is nicer now with the basketball arena next to it, because they can actually have the events that kind of join that. That I don't think it's been down there since that's really kind of been a high point.
Like Atlanta, they've got the whole place that you can go, and the vendors have their stuff.
But it's not a lot of place. Atlanta, I just think it's the worst place to have it. I'm just not a big fan of it. But Nashville, I think it's great, because you literally got the downtown corridor, so you can just walk out, go straight to the honky tonks and the different dives that you can go into and spend a good time.
Yeah, it's definitely great for local businesses for sure.
Oh yeah, and one thing that I was going to allude to there was, what that kind of opens the door for is Missouri or A&M to come in and say, hey, maybe we can host one of those 2 open spots in 17 and 18. I don't know. I mean, could we go to St. Louis now?
No.
I'm telling you.
I hate it. Nah, I don't know.
I mean,
I like Nashville. Nashville needs to be the dead center of the whole freaking thing.
It really is.
That's just me.
I mean, it really, when you think about it, it's really probably the best place for everybody to come, just in terms of travel.
The only thing about it is they have to charge $50 extra for the session, but for the tickets. But it's also you're not going to have 28,000, that you can actually charge. But it's just a better atmosphere. It's a lot more fun of an event, and Nashville does it right.
I mean, as a Kentucky fan, everybody loved it.
Yeah.
But if you talk to those fans that were not necessarily Kentucky fan, they loved the venue and they loved the atmosphere. They loved the facilities. They loved the ability to go out and have a good time right after the game or before the game. So yeah, it's a great place to have the tournament. And the convention center is going to be open by, I think, by the time next year's rolls around.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have all that space to be able to have that vendor area.
Yeah,
really making
it's
it
going
a
to take
whole
Nashville.
experience.
Yeah, it'll take Nashville to the par of some of the larger cities. I mean, you're going to have a women's Final Four in 2014, and so I mean, you're talking about, or it might be 2013, but it's one of those years you're having a Final Four, which is a legacy event, which is, it's not a conference tournament that comes in for 4 days. I mean, this is that'll be the biggest thing they've actually done. So it's a pretty cool deal going on. So looking forward to it. But talking about Nashville and getting back, I know we kind of went around a little bit, but talking about Vanderbilt, and I know we actually started our conversation with them, but
instead we talked about their city.
Yeah. But one of the things I actually saw today in talking about, now, what's been their crux this whole time? I sat here a week ago and said, you know what, there's something telling me that Vanderbilt's kind of getting it together, and they did that. You saw against Florida, man, what a way to just take over a game and really just put it out of reach.
And it was
Florida,
emotional.
Yeah. And it was a big game, but Florida, I mean, gosh, they're shot makers, dude. I mean, that's all they got. And Vanderbilt, I thought, really took charge and took over that game at the end when they needed to do something like that. Because
Florida was not going away that whole entire game. They stayed with them. That was a tough place to play. I mean, it was ESPN primetime.
Yeah.
It was a madhouse, and Florida came to play.
Yeah.
It was a great game.
And so it was just so I was sitting there going, they might be kind of peaking. I was like, Tennessee's been on this good run. Do you think it could end? Does Tennessee, because it's kind of you're going into it and you're thinking that Vanderbilt's a pretty tough matchup with them, and the biggest crux that they've had this whole time is finishing games. 13 seasons under Kevin Stallings, 12 times they've lost the last game of the regular season. That's a big deal.
Yes.
I mean, so you couple that into they're going into the tournament and they have what their whole mantra, they haven't been really successful in the conference tournament,
or the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, but I mean, kind of going into the tournament. Yeah, but the SEC tournament, they really haven't. I mean, the one year they won a couple of games and kind of got going, but they haven't really done well. And I'm sitting there going, all of a sudden you get a Jeffrey Taylor that just all of a sudden acts like he's so disinterested in even being in Tennessee, and they just don't play well. Zealy, I think we'll find out after the year that he's hurt more than we think he is, and it's one of those deals that you got to be a little bit frustrating. So that's why I'm interested to see when it gets down to that second round, if Mississippi State gets there. I'm interested to see what type of Vanderbilt. I have a feeling that it's going to be a more hungry, aggressive team, but then I've said that before, and it's been something totally different. Now, Mississippi State's just a complete enigma, but when he gets to the SEC tournament, they're just like, oh, yeah, it's time to play. Let's just go win 3 in a row.
I brought this up last time. When do you think that Vanderbilt is going to say, like, how many times can they lose in the conference tournament? How many times can they lose in the first round of the tournament before? I mean, it's great what Stallings has done for the program, but when are they really going to say enough is enough? I mean, there's going to come a point in time, I feel, that if they don't advance, it could happen any time. It's like you said earlier. They probably have the talent to make it deep if they have the want. But when is that really going to?
Yeah, I mean, they just got a weird mixture of guys that – because I really, I said this the last time. I thought the 2 young guards, Parker and what's his name, Kendron Johnson, is that right? Or whatever his name is, the point guard. But I thought they came on, man. They played really well at Kentucky. They played really well against Florida. And then it's just like, here's this Vanderbilt team that just kind of showed up. So really interested to see how they actually do, because I keep on thinking that you got to have those experienced guys, and that's where I was totally baffled by Mississippi State, because you have a guy in D. Boss that's played more games than most people in this conference have played this year. So you're talking about a guy that's the head of your team, and really, everything was kind of floundering, and so Vanderbilt's kind of it's there and it's back down. So that guy's trying to get on here, isn't he?
He is. I know he's bound to be picked up on here. If he's not, we're talking about my son screaming in the background. I think that my wife's pinching him or something. I don't know. But no, you're right. It's all going to come down to, can Vanderbilt find that desire and that will to win that they had against Florida, and can they continue to have that same type of momentum?
And that's the thing. The thing about it is it's easy to do it on Senior Day and Memorial Gym, when it means something to you. It's totally different to go into 22,000 people. I mean, it was like the second most people they've had in Thompson-Boling Arena.
Yeah. And the weird thing to me is, too, it's not only that, but, I mean, it's a game where you put a stamp on your season, but you also take Tennessee out of the picture.
Yeah.
So it's like a double, and they were terrible.
Yeah, they just were so disinterested in being there, and it's got to be frustrating for Kevin Stallings too, because I think Stallings is a really good coach. I think he's a great game coach, because I mean, one of the things that you can always find out if a good coach is when they come out of timeouts, do they score right away, do they get a turnover, that type of stuff. And he's always kind of the consummate stuff, but he's also one of those guys that at Vanderbilt, it seems like, and he's kind of one of those hard-nosed guys where he can kind of grind on you. And, at some point he's like, John Jenkins and Jeffrey Taylor, you got to go get the ball, from our point guard and take the last shot. Right. You're a wing player. So, I mean, it's kind of like you're dealing with issues and four-year seniors that you shouldn't really be dealing with. Yeah. But then, gosh, man, you're like, at some point that experience has got to be good and take you to the next level in a tournament atmosphere. So I'm really interested to see how they play in that first game on
I also
Friday.
Find it interesting because I think Stallings, I know we kind of talked about this a little earlier, supposedly he seems to think that Tennessee's going to the NIT, and Calipari seems to think that we're a tournament team. So got the whole spectrum there from
nice segue into Kentucky, because I got some.
But Cal's the ever politician. I mean, he's always good.
Well, it helps him out if he gets if he can get Tennessee into the tournament, makes his team look better.
Yeah, because
the more SEC teams.
I tell you what, man, how impressive is
dominant
16-0, man.
I
mean, that's pretty crazy. I mean,
third time ever, and they're all Kentucky teams.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it, and I don't remember exactly what number this was for regular season championships.
Oh, God.
54th, maybe?
Yeah.
But it's more than all the other SEC teams combined.
Yeah.
It's just that's how dominant that they are. And this team, this program, this year is just – it's not – they're playing good teams. And that Florida game Sunday, it was close for a long period of that time.
Yeah.
But they just –
Anthony Davis – dropping a three.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like
when I look at them, compared to all of their other teams, I mean, I think some of the other teams had great players, don't get me wrong, but this team, there seems to be no selfish player.
No.
I think every other team there was a person, you said DeMarcus Cousins, you looked at him, you're like, head case, selfish. Wall. Well, I mean, Wall was good, but he seemed to have a good personality, but there's always that one person that you kind of questioned, about their personality. And I think on this team, it just seems they play as a team. I really don't. I don't think they're going to have any trouble. I mean, obviously, when you play, maybe a UNC or a Duke or somebody that has that type of talent.
I think that's their test. And I'm really interested to see what they do in the SEC tournament, because I found it very interesting what Calipari said after the game, in that they come back to him. It's funny because it's NBA guys that called the game, because wasn't it Steve Kerr and that whole crew with Marv Albert and all them?
Yeah, it was Kenny. It was Kenny Albert, wasn't it? His son.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it sounds just like him.
Does he?
If it was Marv, he's looking awful young. But I think it was Kenny Albert.
Wow, I did not know. I didn't even pay attention to it. But needless to say, he came out and he said that they asked him about the tournament, and he was like, I'm not excited about going to play. I wish I didn't have to play this conference tournament because I'm 30-1, or whatever it is, 31-1. I mean, I think it's 30-1.
30.
But you're basically a last second 3 from being undefeated, and so now you got to go to this conference tournament, and he kind of just blew it off, saying we got nothing to play for, blah blah blah, and so part of me was going, I think this 16-0 was really a mission for him. Like once they got into it, it became this mantra that they wanted to do. I think if they take a break in the tournament, I think they still win, but could they get to the semifinals and finals and just not play well and be disinterested? I don't think this group does that because I don't think those kids do it. But I wouldn't be surprised. I'd kind of be interested to see what happens.
Is it good if they lose since they haven't lost in so long before the tournament? I mean, if you're the coach, do you want to run? I know you say that, but like, is it good for their just we won?
If you listen
boom,
to
you lose in
Cal,
the tournament.
Midway through through February, he was saying they needed
anything he
needed
says,
to
it
lose.
goes in one of the ear and out the other.
He was out there saying that they needed a loss.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And back then, maybe at this point in the game, the way they're playing and the way they're played against Vanderbilt and Florida, I mean, it wasn't just a close victory. They had control of that game for the most of the game. I mean, the score might have been very close, but if you look at it, Kentucky seemed to be in control the entire 40 minutes, whether the score reflected it or not.
Right.
And at the end of the game, it did reflect it. I mean, they were head and shoulders above all these other programs. I think that this is Cal. I mean, I'll go back. When he got to Kentucky, the only thing he said he was going to be judged by were banners sitting in the rafters.
Yeah.
And he's had 2 teams that have the talent, that have had the talent to get him there. And they've not been able to play as a team to do that. This team is playing like a team, and I think he's got it as a mission to finish this out and only have 1 loss.
Yeah, and that might be the case. I think he might be playing a little bit of, his little politician crap, but it's going to be interesting, man. I think it's going to be fun to see them if they make it through the tournament, which I think they do. I think they're going to go to the Final Four, but when they get matched up with a Syracuse or one of those teams where you've got really length and long players and they run a crazy zone or something like that, it's like that. It's that one game you got to get over the hump type
West
of deal.
Virginia or
yeah.
I mean, that was last year's dagger. I mean, they just had a different game plan that Kentucky wasn't ready for. And
I think this team is different, though.
Yeah, because I think they can beat you a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I think last team, team was more one-dimensional.
You've got a Marcus, you got a Teague kid that's playing good. And, that was everybody's kind of like, what's this kid going to do? Now, if he gets matched up with the kid from North Carolina, the point guard there, I mean, he had 20 and 10 yesterday. He's playing the NBA. That dude's good.
Yeah.
Washington or whatever his name is. I can't remember kids' names nowadays, but
I think they said they're gonna have like 4 lottery picks UNC right now.
Yeah,
not the Kentucky.
I mean Henson for sure, but I mean it's kind of so you've got Darius Miller, or is that his right name? I mean, like, I just want to punch the dude in the face because he just comes off and
comes off the bench.
I mean, he just comes off and he just makes a move and just buries a 16-footer yesterday to go up 4 when there was like a 6-0 run by Florida, and you're just like, it's like that one play they just put the dagger in you, and it's just unbelievable.
And that's kind of where I was trying to allude to, and I don't think I made my point well, is the fact that you look at the Kentucky team, and generally you want a team to lose when they're not doing what they need to do. But when Kentucky has a chance to basically put their foot on the neck of their opponent and keep them down, they generally find a way to do that.
Yeah.
When you want a team to lose, it's when they're cocky and arrogant and they think they're the best team and they're around strutting that. You don't see Kentucky when they come out there to play to do that. They're they don't do a lot of taunting. They play good fundamental basketball and they have fun doing it. They are encouraging to each other as far as teammates, and I don't think that loss mentality has to come into play for Kentucky. Yeah. That doesn't mean that they won't lose. It just means that their goal now is to win.
Yeah, I also saw this past week where they're the highest favorite in like the past 25 years to win the tournament right now, going into the tournament.
I believe it. I mean, they're the most dominant team.
I can't remember the odds, but it's like
I think with Syracuse is a relatively close second just because of the turmoil that they had there in the program and the Fab Mello and all that junk that they went through, and now they got the drug probe and all this kind of stuff. So
it'll be interesting. Him and Davis, I want to see that matchup.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. So really, you got Cats fans that are going to be rolling into New Orleans this weekend. Are they going to be back in 3 weeks for the Final Four?
Yes.
Get their little mix there going. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, they'll just come up to Louisville. They'll just go straight up to Louisville and wherever the next one will be.
I don't know if you saw that Mississippi State won Conan O'Brien's national championship pick on his. Did you see his little 2-minute commercial?
No.
He basically makes a bracket board that is all like adhesive, and he just throws paper, all little strips of paper with all the teams' names, and the one that lands closest to the middle in Mississippi State was right across the national championship all by itself.
That's funny.
So,
well, let's take a look real quick. We are going longer than I thought we would. At the top part of the bracket, the first set of games, LSU and Arkansas. I just don't know what to expect. It depends on what Arkansas team you have. And LSU is a team that's really, if you look at, they remind me a little bit like Tennessee as far as they've showed continual improvement throughout this whole season. And that's going to be a great game. If you look at the first round matchups, to me, that's the most intriguing matchup that we have.
Yeah, I think you're going to see. I think LSU is going to hands down win it. I think Arkansas is not playing very well right now. LSU really isn't either because they kind of had a little bit of a skid. LSU and Tennessee were about to play for really an opportunity to kind of get into that bye situation. A week and a half ago, and LSU's ended up losing 3 out of 4, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. So, that's going to be an interesting matchup, I think so. And Arkansas's just, ever since that Michigan win, they just kind of fell off the train a little bit. So they're a little bit scattered. So I mean, and they haven't played well away from Fayetteville. So I'm interested to see how that. That's an early game too. Who's going to be awake for that one?
Well, it's noon Central time, so that's 1 Eastern.
They wake up by 11:30.
And then you've got the other matchup is going to be Alabama, South Carolina. I think Alabama should easily walk into that one.
South Carolina.
To face Florida. But that matchup there, Florida-Alabama, will be a good matchup.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right.
I mean, that's of the second round, it to me, I'm giving Alabama the win. I'm giving LSU the win. So LSU, Kentucky, I want to take Kentucky. The Florida-Alabama game, it's good. To me, it's a toss-up.
It could be. I think you still got to be somewhat there on Florida. The problem with Florida is when they lost Eget or whatever his name was, that killed them, man, because they didn't have a lot of low post presence, and that guy was 6'8" and just an energy and rebounding guy, and he went out with the concussion or whatever it was, and he's been out for 4 games, I think, or 5 games. And Billy Donovan's still been able to keep plugging along. Yeah, and so I think they just kind of hit a wall this last week. But I still like Florida in that situation just because they can shoot the ball. Because that's the thing with Alabama is that Florida's going to hit – they're going to shoot threes.
They're going to get theirs.
Yeah, and Alabama I just think is going to have a hard time scoring, but we'll see.
And if Alabama can defend that perimeter and keep them honest.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, Auburn, we all think Ole Miss is going to go there, so that's going to face them against UT, and I really like Tennessee's chances there.
I do too. I like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game, just because of the way Ole Miss is playing. If they win, if they handle Auburn pretty well in that first game, that's 4 in a row. A little momentum going, and they really got nothing to lose. Tennessee. Because Tennessee's going to hear it this week. Well, you got to win 2 and get in that. I mean, there's a lot of teams that have been in that situation. You win 2 of them, man, you might have a shot. So could it be a little bit of tension, a little bit of
they
something?
play a little tight because they've got that pressure where Ole Miss doesn't have any pressure.
It won't completely surprise me. I still think it's 75, 80% chance Tennessee wins that ball game.
All right, and we're going to give Mississippi State the win over Georgia. So Take us into the Mississippi State Vandy game.
It's just like we talked about. I think
it all depends on what Vandy team shows
right,
up.
And I think that's what we were talking about just a minute ago is it going to be the Vanderbilt team that, to me, after what they did against Tennessee and now they're coming into the tournament with all the questions, I think they're going to be a hungry team. I think they're going to be feisty and ready to go. And so it's just going to be kind of one of those deals where which Vandy team shows up. And you could say the exact same thing for Mississippi State. I mean, you're talking about if they can handle Georgia early, do they have a little momentum going? I mean, I could see Mississippi State winning 3 games just like that. Just because if they play defense and they play well, they could beat anybody. But Vanderbilt, I think it's a bad matchup for Mississippi State. And so if Vanderbilt plays and they got a little bit, they kind of stole one from Vanderbilt as well. So I think it's a tough game for Mississippi State.
Yeah, I'm going to give the edge to Vanderbilt because I just don't. I'm torn. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I say Vanderbilt, but
it's 2 teams that are just complete enigmas, man.
Well, and your whole thing earlier, if they really had that come to Jesus kind of speech, who knows what kind of Mississippi State team you have?
Yeah.
And if they've got their heads straight and can start playing even halfway as a team, I mean, because it is every man for itself at Mississippi State before last week. Who knows what's going to happen with this game?
Yeah, the only thing that's got me somewhat positive on Mississippi State is obviously their dominating performance on Saturday. I mean, that was the first time I think all year, other than going to Madison Square Garden against Arizona and Texas A&M, and they just went out and just took control of the game and looked like a totally different team. And plus, I think the advantage is Hood got hurt against the Kentucky game, sat out 2 games.
Right.
And he was playing so many minutes as a freshman.
Bruised knee, right?
Yeah, and I think in hindsight that's been good because he came back the other day. He's playing well. I think he's going to get back into more of the rotation with a little bit of rest that was forced upon him. And then we got DeVell Smith, who's the little point guard that is getting –
more playing.
Yeah, the last 2 games got into the game a lot. So all of a sudden they've got 7, possibly 8 guys that they didn't have. I mean, 2 weeks ago they were 6 people, and if you got somebody hurt, they were in trouble. Yeah. So I think they're a little bit more fresh than we thought they would be coming into the tournament. Because you told me, Sydney going to go back to back to back. It's going to be pretty tough. So I'm interested to see, but it's tournament time, so State just loves to play in the tournament for some reason.
We'll see what plays out, and I don't think there's no reason to go through the whole rest of it and try to pick the winner. But because at that point we could all be wrong at that point.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think we all pretty much agree that Kentucky should win the tournament.
Yeah.
But I think we also agree at the same time there could be a surprise team or just somebody that we don't really realize. Like you said, State could easily do it.
Yeah.
I think there's – you never know.
Well, I think the SEC has a lot of talent that doesn't get recognized, and it's because that every week there's a team that's not playing up to their potential, whether it's Vanderbilt or Mississippi State, Alabama. I mean, there's all these teams out here that have all this talent, and I've talked about this on another podcast, the fact that, the SEC, as far as in basketball, doesn't get a lot of love from all the committees as far as getting tournament time. But if you look at it, they're all beating up on each other, and it's because the SEC is so difficult to play each other on a consistent basis. And you look at this, you say Kentucky should win, but now they're going to have to play Florida again.
Yeah.
Ideally, I think that they're going to beat, I would say, Florida over Alabama. Now all of a sudden Kentucky's going to have to play Florida again for a 3rd time.
So the thing about it is, the thing you got to remember about the tournament is you're dealing with a neutral site that's a little bit of a different crowd than you ever had. So it's just a different feel. Yeah, except for Kentucky. And
it's a home game for Kentucky no matter where they play.
Right. And so you'll have some Mississippi State fans that'll be there just because it's close in New Orleans. Yeah. You'll also have, Alabama will probably not come. I mean, they'll come a little bit, but I mean, you're going to have Kentucky. Florida's not going to travel. They never really travel well.
Kentucky fans are able to go to these tournaments in such droves because that's the only way some of these fans can get tickets.
Yeah.
I mean,
they can't get in Rupp.
They can't get in Rupp.
It's their chance.
Those season tickets are sold out. This is their chance to go root on.
It's Daytona.
Yeah,
it's what I do this year. You know, every year I'm going. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to the SEC tournament because that's the time I get to see them.
Yeah, so they can instead of spending money on season tickets that they can't get, they can take that same money and go see them 3 or 4 times in a tournament. And realistically, that means more than a couple home season games.
Yeah.
So for Kentucky fans, that's one reason why they travel so well. So to them, this is going to be somewhat of they're going to have the home crowd no matter what venue they're playing at.
Yeah, and I'm going to be a little bit off this week because I'm going to be on vacation during this time. I normally go to this tournament every year, but my wife's birthday is on that Monday, and so we're going to Tampa, and so I'm going to be pretty busy this whole week, so it's going to be kind of hard for me to watch this tournament. So I'll be interested to kind of follow along and track it and see, but if you're out there and you haven't been to an SEC basketball tournament, it's a lot of fun, and if you really like basketball, it's a really, really cool thing to do. I mean, it'd probably be the best $300 I'll spend, and you get to go watch, 11 games? Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a bad value.
Yeah, it's not a bad value at all, and it's really, if you really like basketball, Thursday and Friday are just as fun as they get, man, because you get to see everybody. It's a good time, and it's cool to see those teams come in and kind of enjoy the whole atmosphere.
Well, let's wrap this thing up and do open mic, and I basically let you have it right there. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Blair?
I'm looking forward to Clearwater, Florida. So I'm going to see my wife's twin sister, and so they're going to celebrate their birthday.
You going to see any baseball?
No, will not. It's going to be my 2-year-old son and their 2.5-year-old boy, and so it's cousins. They don't get to see each other very often, so they're fired up about that. And I think we're going to do the zoo and the beach and a number of things, play golf one day. So good.
And people can find you
at Blair Smyly, Smyly.
Tweetless Blair.
That's right, man.
John, how about yourself? Anything you want to throw out there on the open mic?
Not much. Just really looking forward to these tournaments. As a Tennessee fan, I just really want to see what the Vols can do. Like I said before, they need to win at least one, probably 2. So should be interesting.
One's enough to be scared.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be watching Selection Sunday and really wondering if you're going to be in or not.
Yeah, it'll also be interesting to see, because I've heard some rumors about this, maybe a coach of the year for the SEC is what I heard today. I wouldn't have thought about it, like I said, a couple weeks ago, but I heard that there might be a between Conzo and Calipari. I mean, either way, it doesn't really, affect me personally. I don't know if he deserves it. I mean, to go 16-0 in the SEC tournament, I think it's a given that Calipari is going to get it.
Yeah.
But just something I heard today, so I just wanted to.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, just something I wanted.
I mean, but you're also talking about Tennessee. They went, from 11.
You're talking about losing your
2,
coach with nobody. Yeah, so. But I mean, I just wanted to say that. And you can find me at John_Schultz on Twitter.
And you spell that?
SCHULTZ.
And you spell John?
JON.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I mean,
there's only about 10 spellings of each.
Yeah.
Probably should have clarified a little bit.
Just trying to help you out there so you can get that one follower that might be listening to this podcast an hour in.
After I welcomed myself to start the show.
There we go. Well, I think we alluded last week that I celebrated a milestone birthday. And my wife got me a trip to Austin. So
that's very cool.
So we're headed to Austin in a couple of weeks, or about a month and a half, I guess. So gonna think on the docket, it's gonna catch a little Longhorn baseball. They play Kansas that weekend.
Awesome.
So the girls want to go shopping, and it's my birthday. And so they're going through all this stuff that they want to go do, and they start talking about the shopping district. I go, wait, whose birthday are we going down to celebrate anyways?
Doesn't Austin have the bridge that has the bats?
It does. We're going to catch that one night. But I think some of the guys, there's a couple guys that are going down, so we might try to catch a baseball game and golf while they shop.
Man, you're going to see Texas, and you've already been to Mississippi State. So that's 2 of the largest season ticket holder crowds that you'll find. So
that's what's
spot.
on the coming down the pipe for P. Shane Bailey. That's where you can find me on Twitter. And with that, guys, we're going to call this roundtable done.